Welcome to the Sunday Signal. I'm David Richards, technology entrepreneur, co-founder of Yorkshire AI Labs, and weekly columnist for the Yorkshire Post. This is issue 62 for Sunday the 12th of July 2026. Today's title, The AI Wars Go Agentic. 4 major models landed in 3 days. The price war intensified below the flagship tier, and Anthropic began the month restored from a short-lived export control suspension. Raw intelligence is no longer enough. Execution economics increasingly decide what gets deployed. Here is what is coming up. First, the new AI hierarchy, mapped and fact-checked. Then the practical guide, which AI to use for which task. And I will give you the whole thing, every workload and every step of the evaluation process, because that is the part you will actually use on Monday morning. Then my column from Friday's Yorkshire Post about walking Boston's Freedom Trail with a Harvard historian in my ear. Then the launch of something new and free, the Signal Playbook. And we close, as always, with the layoff tracker, where the mid-year numbers are brutal. If you want the written edition, with the comparison tables and the tracker graphic, it is free at theSundaySignal.ai. That is theSundaySignal.ai. And if you get value from this show, follow it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube. It takes 10 seconds, and it is the single best way to help it grow. Let's get into it. The week ran like this. On Monday the 6th of July, Tencent released Hunyuan High 3. On Wednesday, XAI released Grok 4.5. And on Thursday, Meta and OpenAI released Muse Spark 1.1 and GPT 5.6 within hours of each other. 4 major models in 3 days, with one caveat that belongs up front. Tencent's claim that High 3 competes with the larger flagship systems is, for now, Tencent's claim. Anthropic's return is the other story, and the dates matter. The American export controls that suspended their most powerful models were lifted on the 30th of June, and access to Claude Fable 5 was restored on the 1st of July. Mythos 5 has not returned to general availability. It remains limited to approved organizations. So the most watched model family on the frontier entered July operational but not unrestricted. Strip away the launch theatre and one pattern emerges. Every lab, without exception, has pivoted its pitch away from raw intelligence and towards agentic efficiency. Long horizon, multi-step task execution, run autonomously, priced to deploy at scale. The customer being courted is no longer the curious consumer. It is the chief operating officer with a headcount spreadsheet open in the next window. So who actually leads? The honest answer is that it depends on the workload, and anyone selling you a single winner this week is selling you something. Claude Fable 5 retains the published lead on SweBench Pro, the hardest widely cited software engineering benchmark, resolving 80% of tasks. But GPT 5.6 Sol leads the Artificial Analysis Coding Agent Index at 80 to Fable's 77.2. And on Terminal Bench, Sol scores 88.8% in standard form, rising to 91.9% in its multi-agent ultra configuration, with Fable at 83.1. The practical case for Fable is strong performance on difficult long-horizon software work. It is not a disclosed architectural advantage. Partner testimony from testing says that at its highest effort setting, Fable reflects on and validates its own work before returning it. Treat that as observed behavior, not a documented mechanism, and the trade-offs matter as much as the scores. Premium pricing, safety classifiers that route flagged cybersecurity, biology, and chemistry requests across to Opus 4.8, and mandatory 30-day retention on all Mythos-class traffic. Price all 3 in before you move proprietary code or scientific work onto it. Underneath the software, the hardware race is accelerating on both sides of the Pacific. Reuters report that an internal memo shows Meta plan to begin manufacturing their Iris accelerator in September, augmenting rather than replacing their NVIDIA and AMD fleet. DeepSeek have optimized V4, their 1.6 trillion parameter mixture of experts model, for Huawei's Ascend platform, and Reuters separately report they are developing an inference chip of their own. The common objective is not immediate independence, it is control over cost, supply, and inference capacity, and the regulatory lesson runs alongside it. Anthropic's June suspension and July restoration is a live demonstration of the geopolitical risk premium now embedded in AI supply chains. So architect for model agnosticism. Your applications should be able to swap one frontier family for another before lunch, if trade friction locks one down again. The bottom line, there is no uncontested technical crown. Fable owns the hardest coding benchmark. Sol owns the terminal and the composite coding index. And Terra and Grok 4.5 are commoditizing everything below the flagship tier. Which brings us to the guide. Here it is in full. Which AI for which task, as of this weekend. And a health warning before we start. The market changed on Thursday, so these are default candidates, not conclusions. The conclusions have to come from your own evaluation, on your own work. I will tell you how to run that evaluation at the end. First, Long Horizon Software Engineering, shortlist Claude Fable 5 and GPT 5.6, Sol, and test both against your own repositories rather than the leaderboards. Fable leads SweBench Pro, Sol leads the Coding Agent Index. Weigh Fable's premium pricing, its sensitive domain fallbacks, and its 30-day retention against what the benchmark deltas are actually worth on your code base. And if you need a budget option for lower stakes internal tooling, look at Grok 4.5. Second, terminal work, sysadmin, and live infrastructure. GPT 5.6 Sol is the leading candidate. Be precise about the headline number. 91.9% on terminal bench uses the multi-agent ultra configuration. Standard Sol scores 88.8. Either way, it is the natural first test for security operations and site reliability copilot work. Third, high-volume document and workflow automation. Test GPT 5.6, Terra against Grok 4.5, and judge them on total cost per successful task, not token price. A cheaper model that burns twice the tokens, makes more tool calls, or needs more human rework costs, more per completed job. Token price is the sticker. Cost per accepted result is the invoice. Fourth, multimodal and computer use agents. Muse Spark 1.1 is the natural first candidate. That is Meta's stated focus for the model. Multimodal reasoning for agentic tasks, computer use, tool orchestration, and coding. Validate it on your own interface flows. Fifth, science and healthcare. No crown here, and be wary of anyone offering one. OpenAI's own published table puts Sol and Fable both at around 60% on HealthBench Professional, and Fable's biology and chemistry fallbacks may disqualify it for some workflows outright. Evaluate against your own protocols. And sixth, local and on-premises deployment. Tencent's High 3 is a credible open-weight candidate, a 295 billion parameter mixture of experts design, with 21 billion active released under the Apache 2 license. One discipline, though, open weights make local operation possible. They do not by themselves establish security, sovereignty, or regulatory compliance. Hosting, telemetry, data flows, model provenance, and local regulations still need their own review. Now, how do you turn those candidates into a decision? 4 steps. Write these down. Step 1. Select 50 to 100 representative production tasks and include your difficult failures, not just the average cases. An evaluation built on easy tickets flatters every model and informs nothing. Step 2. Run them through at least 2 candidate models, identical tools, identical harness, identical acceptance criteria. The launch tables are not apples to apples. Your evaluation must be. Step 3. Measure what the invoice measures. Pass rate, elapsed time, total tokens in and out, human rework, refusal and fallback rate, and total cost per accepted result. Step 4. Route only after that evidence exists, and keep an abstraction layer between your applications and every provider, because Thursday will happen again. Route on evidence, not on press releases. The companies that learn this in the 3rd quarter will be the ones still solvent enough to enjoy the 4th. Now for the other side of the ledger. I've spent much of this newsletter's life warning about what AI will do to white-collar work, and I retract none of it. But the ledger has 2 sides, and my column in Friday's Yorkshire Post is about the other one. A quick note on timing. I wrote it on Friday morning, before England's quarter-final against Norway on Saturday night. By the time you hear this, we both know how that ended. Here is the column as it went to print. 2 weeks ago, I found myself in Boston with a free afternoon, which in 30 years of visiting the city on business had never once happened. I was there for the World Cup, ahead of England's goalless draw with Ghana at Foxborough, and this is the 250th anniversary year of American independence. So I finally did the thing I'd always skipped. I walked the Freedom Trail. A quick aside. During my 23 years in California, someone would ask me almost every July whether we celebrate the 4th of July in Britain. My answer never varied. Of course we do. We call it Loss of Colony Day. Rather than buy a guidebook or surrender to Google, I built my own tour guide. I gave an AI a role, an elite Harvard historian specializing in the American Revolution, acting as my private guide in real time. Keep each stop under 250 words, never jump ahead. Skip the textbook summaries in favor of gritty realities, human flaws and political scheming. I use Claude's audio function, so I put my earphones in and set off from Boston Common with a voice in my ear. At each stop, I said 2 words, I'm here. And the history arrived, told like a thriller. At the Granary Burying Ground, it introduced me to Paul Revere and Sam Adams lying a few feet apart. At the Old North Church, it told me the famous 2 lanterns burned for less than a minute before being snuffed out, and that the man who hung them was Robert Newman, a 23-year-old church caretaker history forgot. The bells in that steeple, it added, were cast in Gloucester in 1744, the oldest change-ringing bells in North America. Among the teenagers who once rang them was Paul Revere himself. On Copp's Hill, it showed me Captain Daniel Malcolm's gravestone, still dented by British musket balls, fired at a dead patriot's defiant epitaph for target practice. Best of all, I learned Revere never shouted, "The British are coming." The colonists still considered themselves British. The warning that passed through the countryside was that the regulars were out. I also discovered that the Liberty Bell has an English prehistory. Its first incarnation came from London's Whitechapel Foundry, but it cracked on its first test. Philadelphia metalworkers John Pass and John Stowe melted it down and recast the bell in 1753. Its inscription still spells Pennsylvania with a single N. That was acceptable at the time. Today it reads like a typo on a national relic. The same technology handled the rest of the trip. One prompt cast the AI as a corporate travel expert, comparing flights by on-time performance and aircraft comfort. Another played hospitality analyst, offering 3 hotels with a bull case, a bear case, and the exact floor to request. A third, a cynical culinary critic, built a 1-day itinerary with a plan B for bad weather. Every recommendation landed. I have spent much of this column's life warning about what AI will do to white-collar work, and I retract none of it. But the ledger has 2 sides. This summer, anyone with a phone and a decent prompt has a private historian, a travel agent, and a concierge on call, free, in their pocket. The trick is not the technology, but the ask. Give it a role, give it constraints, give it taste. Vague questions get brochure answers. Precise ones get expertise, which brings me to Friday morning and to tomorrow night in Miami, where England face Norway in a World Cup quarter-final. Get past Haaland and his Vikings, and the semi-final beckons in Atlanta. Beyond that, maybe, just maybe, a final on American soil in New Jersey, 250 years after the Declaration was signed. Should it come to that, I know exactly what the cry from the terraces ought to be. Not the regulars this time, the English are coming. That was the column, and those Boston prompts were not improvised on the pavement. They were built, tested, and refined, and they are the seed of something new that launches this week, the Signal Playbook. Here is the idea. Every week, this newsletter analyses what AI is doing to work, to markets, and to the country. And readers keep asking the obvious next question. Fine, but what do I actually type into the box? The playbook is the answer. Each edition is a standalone, production-ready guide to one real-world job. Copy the prompts, fill in the brackets, keep them forever. Playbook number 1 is called Stop Prompting Claude Like a Tourist. 20 production-ready prompts that turn Claude into a working travel desk. And the premise is simple. Most published travel prompts fail because they treat Claude like an overly cheerful concierge. Ask nicely and you get brochure copy. Pleasant, generic, and useless when you're standing on a rain-slicked platform trying to decode a foreign transit map. The fix is not better manners, It is better structure. A working prompt reads like code, an explicit role, hard constraints, a list of things it must refuse, and a defined output format. Take the hotel prompt from Boston. It is number 3 of the 20, the anti-tourist hotel scout, and I will give it to you in full, because the structure is the lesson. It opens with the role. You are a hospitality industry short seller and a cynical local culture editor. That single line changes everything because a short seller gets paid for finding what is wrong. Then the parameters, your city, your number of nights and the month, your nightly budget in local currency, and your aesthetic, whether that is brutalist, high design boutique or classic luxury. Then the filtration rules, exclude the major tourist epicenters, the cruise ship bottlenecks, and the over-indexed influencer hubs. Focus on walkable neighborhoods with distinct architectural integrity and a high density of independent local businesses. The tourist traps are gone before the search even starts. And finally, the output format. Identify the top 3 properties, and for each one deliver 4 things: the neighborhood intel, the social fabric of the area and why it beats the tourist center, the bull case, the design merits, the service quality, the privacy perks, the bear case, the cynical downsides, the micro rooms, the street noise corridors, the weak water pressure, the poor transit access, and the room hack, the precise room tier, view orientation, or floor range to request. Fill in the 4 brackets, paste the whole block, and go. The model cannot retreat into brochure copy because the structure will not let it. The full set covers the whole trip, organized the way a trip actually unfolds, booking, briefing, the ground, the mission, and the moment it all goes wrong. Flight friction, rail strategy, insurance read the way a claims department reads it for the exclusions, borders, scams, packing, jet lag, food worth queuing for, hire car disputes, and what to do on the day the airline cancels on you. And one discipline runs through all 20. Wherever a prompt touches visa rules, passenger rights, or medication laws, it forces Claude to flag the volatile rule and point you at the official source. Trust the analysis. Verify the law. 3 things to know. The playbooks are free. They will be a regular feature published between the weekly issues, and they follow one editorial rule, the same one that ran through the Freedom Trail. Vague questions get brochure answers. Precise ones get expertise. The first one is live now at the SundaySignal.ai. And so to the layoff tracker. This is the week 27 wrap, covering the 5th to the 11th of July, and we have crossed the mid-year threshold. The consolidated picture is sobering. Across every sector, Layoff Hedge's macro tracker puts 2026 job losses at more than 585,000 year to date. The tech-specific figure stands at 185,894, or roughly 120,000. On the strict baseline, about 7,300 were added this week, driven almost entirely by Microsoft's July fiscal reset. The mid-year data delivers an unforgiving reality check. Tech sector layoffs in the first half of 2026 averaged roughly 1,000 job losses per working day. That is an 83% explosion compared with the first half of last year. The sector now accounts for nearly 1/3 of all job losses globally, with the United States, the absolute epicenter, at 121,000 cuts. And the corporate story has changed. In late 2024 and early 2025, companies reached for AI transition buzzwords to mask revenue stagnation and pandemic-era overhiring. Entering the 3rd quarter of 2026, the market has seen through the cover-up. According to Challenger, Gray, and Christmas outplacement data, AI was the single most cited reason for technology layoffs. In May and June, the 3rd consecutive month, it has topped the list. This is the death of AI laundering. The stated reason and the real reason have converged, and the trade is explicit. Highly profitable conglomerates are posting record revenues while executing a capital transfusion, liquidating payroll lines to fund infrastructure capital expenditure, custom silicon orders, and hyperscale cluster deployments. The impact is no longer confined to support and operational roles. Senior engineering teams, middle management, and entire product divisions are being systematically dismantled. Microsoft first, 6,400 total cuts, the single most disruptive signal entering the new fiscal quarter. 4,800 roles went across enterprise sales, cloud consulting and customer success, timed precisely to the July fiscal year end. At the same time, an internal memo from the newly appointed Xbox chief, Asha Sharma, forced an immediate 1,600-person reduction, 20% of the gaming workforce, to correct a business model the memo described as not healthy. A further 1,600 roles will follow over fiscal 27. The WARN filings cleared late this week and proved the product developers bore the brunt. 213 at ZeniMax in Maryland, 136 at ID Software in Texas, 52 at Obsidian in California, falling heavily on QA, asset design, and usability engineering. The Chief People Officer, Amy Coleman, insisted the roles are not being directly replaced by AI. The cuts nonetheless defend the margins beneath the $190 billion AI infrastructure and data center budget. Oracle next. 25,254 roles gone this year, now locked down as the largest single tech reduction initiative of 2026 via the annual 10K, and the regulatory filings say the quiet part in print. The adoption and deployment of AI across internal operations has resulted and will continue to result in workforce reductions. The human liquidation ran concurrently with an expanding AI data center footprint, boosting quarterly margins while the firm reports massive cloud backlogs. Watch two sectors through mid-July. First, mid-market enterprise sales and customer success. Microsoft's hollowing out of their commercial divisions puts institutional pressure on every peer business software firm to match those operating margins. And as platforms shift to product-led growth engines and agentic onboarding bots, large human account management tiers face sudden localized flushes this month. Second, AAA gaming and co-development studios. The multi-state cuts across Microsoft's premium intellectual property expose the operational strain in the sector. As development cycles stretch and consumer monetization cools, expect parent holding companies to execute rapid defensive restructurings across independent studios and the supporting QA and art pipelines ahead of third quarter earnings calls. Time for the final thought. Hold this week's two stories side by side. In one, the labs shipped 4 major models in 3 days and pushed the price of machine cognition sharply lower. In the other, the most profitable companies in history cut thousands of jobs and called it transformation. Nobody can prove a one-to-one causal chain between a benchmark score and a redundancy notice, and I will not pretend to, but the direction of the capital is not in dispute. Every gain on SweBench Pro strengthens the business case for moving work from payroll to capital expenditure. The companies executing these cuts are not in distress, they are in a hurry, and the workers being shown the door are not being replaced by nothing. They are being replaced in part by the very models whose scores opened this issue. The agentic turn is real, the efficiency gains are real, and as my afternoon in Boston shows, the technology in your pocket is a marvel. But let's not launder the accounting. Record revenues, record capital expenditure, record layoffs, all in the same quarter, from the same companies. That is not a correction. That is a choice. That is the Sunday Signal, issue 62. Thank you for listening. If you found it useful, share it with one colleague who needs it. The full written edition, with every comparison table and the layoff tracker graphic, is free at thesundaysignal.ai. And do follow the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube, so the algorithm works for us rather than against us. Until next Sunday, I'm David Richards. Thank you for listening to the Sunday Signal.